Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Leslie loathes the thought of losing her inheritance, a shadow that hangs over her like an iron chain rattling in the dark. From the very beginning, her paranoia about money is not simply greed but an echo of her deepest insecurity, the fear of being insignificant, of fading into the background of the Dupree legacy where names and fortunes carry more weight than character. The whisper of revocation, the suggestion that all she believes is guaranteed could be torn away, gnaws at her until it begins to shape her actions. Her every glance carries suspicion. Her every conversation becomes a calculation. It is in this atmosphere of tension that Anita, sharp-eyed and steady, begins to unravel the first knot of deceit. Anita discovers that Peaches has lied, though she does not confront her directly. Instead, she chooses silence, a silence more deliberate and cutting than any accusation. She plays her part with calculated patience, masking her knowledge behind a facade of acceptance. The decision is not cowardice but a choice. She withholds her judgment because she knows timing is everything. Yet in doing so, she takes on a secret weight, carrying not only the truth of Peach's dishonesty but also the burden of pity for Leslie. For Anita, pity is not weakness, it is a responsibility she extends reluctantly, one tethered to her awareness that Leslie is Barbara's daughter. That lineage, that bond, spares Leslie from immediate exposure, at least in Anita's mind. Anita and Vernon, aligned in their quiet understanding, keep the truth locked away. An unspoken agreement that silence is more strategic than revelation for now. And while they preserve Leslie from the storm of consequences, Leslie herself grows reckless, as if shielded too long from reality. She cannot sense the fragile mercy being extended to her. Instead, she lashes out, finding new ways to diminish the Dupree family's standing in order to elevate her own. Her antics, as others whisper behind closed doors, become less amusing and more destructive. Each act of rebellion chips away at the patience of those around her, but Leslie does not notice, or perhaps she does, and that is precisely why she escalates. Anita, with her keen sense of proportion, begins to recognize the cost of such indulgence. She wonders if the Duprees, herself included, have allowed Leslie too much freedom, too much leniency, until the boundaries between compassion and indulgence blur into nothingness. There is an invisible line Leslie was never meant to cross, yet her arrogance pushes her further each day. And while Anita hesitates to draw that line herself, she cannot ignore the growing conviction that Leslie has mistaken grace for weakness. The world Leslie constructs for herself is one of shallow triumphs. She flaunts her wealth with a kind of desperation, brandishing symbols of luxury as proof of her value. To her, extravagance is identity. Without it, she feels erased. Yet not everyone is impressed. Eva, whose quiet dignity is as steady as stone, recoils from the constant spectacle. To Eva, the endless performance of riches is exhausting, a mask that suffocates genuine connection. She sees clearly what Leslie does not: wealth can breed isolation as quickly as it can attract admiration. Eva's patience is tested each time Leslie insists on dragging her into displays that reek of vanity. It is not hatred Eva fears from others but the emptiness of being defined by another's arrogance. She urges Leslie, with a sincerity that borders on pleading, to slow down, to savor life in smaller, softer moments. But her words fall on ears unwilling to listen. For Leslie, the absence of chaos is the absence of meaning. A quiet day feels like a wasted one. Peace is, in her mind, indistinguishable from insignificance. This restless hunger within Leslie only intensifies when news reaches her about Barbara. Dante, once a figure she believed to be constant, abandons Barbara without warning. The betrayal ripples through the family, but for Leslie it is both a personal wound and an unexpected mirror. She sees in Barbara's downfall the reflection of her own fragility. The sorrow she feels is not entirely compassion for Barbara but a deepening fear that she too can be discarded, that no wealth or family tie can protect her from abandonment. The news rattles her, but instead of softening her, it twists into fuel for her insecurities, driving her to hold tighter to the illusion of control through excess and defiance. Yet the true blow comes not from Dandy's betrayal but from Anita's revelation. With a voice that cuts through all of Leslie's posturing, Anita tells her the unvarnished truth: Every cent Leslie has received from the trust fund has come not from entitlement or destiny, but from Anita's deliberate hand. It is Anita alone who has ensured Leslie's survival, Anita who has funneled money into the fund when no one else would. The trust, once imagined as an untouchable inheritance, is stripped bare to reveal nothing more than Anita's reluctant generosity. For Leslie, this revelation is earth-shattering. The inheritance she guarded as proof of her worth was never hers by right. It was Anita's gift, given out of pity, not respect. Anita does not mince words. She makes it clear that had she not pitied Leslie, had she not seen in her the shadow of Barabra, Leslie would not have a single dollar to her name. The foundation of Leslie's arrogance crumbles in that moment, leaving her exposed. But exposure does not guarantee change. What follows is the central question that hangs in the air, pressing down on everyone involved. Will Leslie recognize her excesses and temper her pride, or will she spiral further, blinded by her own entitlement, until Anita is forced to revoke everything she once gave? The uncertainty sharpens the tension, turning each interaction into a test. When Leslie enters a room, eyes dart between her and Anita, waiting for the storm to break. Conversations carry a double weight: what is said aloud, and what is left unsaid about the fragile balance of power. The Duprees navigate this fragile terrain carefully, aware that one misstep could tip Leslie into outright self-destruction or ignite Anita's long-simmering wrath. At the same time, Leslie's behavior grows more unpredictable. Instead of retreating into humility, she often doubles down on arrogance, as if daring Anita to act. Each ostentatious gesture becomes more deliberate, more pointed. There is a perverse thrill Leslie seems to draw from taunting the very people who hold her future in their hands. She can note or will note see that Anita's patience is finite, that Vernon's neutrality cannot last forever, that Eva's quiet disapproval is a warning of her isolation. The more Anita reflects on the situation, the clearer it becomes. Leslie has confused kindness with obligation. She has mistaken Anita's mercy for surrender, failing to recognize that Anita's control of the trust fund is an unshakable truth. And while Anita has long been the type to protect family, even from themselves, there is a growing edge in her voice, a hint that her tolerance may be nearing its end. What complicates everything is the shadow of Barbara's disgrace. Her downfall is a constant reminder that even those with the strongest reputations can collapse under the weight of betrayal. Leslie sees Barbara's suffering and interprets it through her own fears, but Anita views it as proof of how fragile their family truly is. If Barbara can fall, why not Leslie? If Barbara can be abandoned, why not anyone else? The family is not as untouchable as Leslie believes, and Anita knows it. As the days unfold, the Dupree household becomes a crucible of shifting alliances and simmering resentments. Vernon remains calm but observant, carefully weighing each word before he speaks, unwilling to let the family implode but fully aware of the storm circling overhead. Peaches, though caught in her earlier lie, treads carefully, masking her guilt in nervous smiles and deflections. Eva, quiet but firm, continues to distance herself from Leslie's extravagance, though her counsel remains gentle, as though she still hopes to guide Leslie toward humility. And then there is Leslie, the center of it all, spinning faster and faster in her spiral of pride and desperation. The revelation of Anita's role in her inheritance does not humble her, it destabilizes her. She oscillates between anger and denial, clinging to her identity as the heiress even as the foundation beneath it disintegrates. At times, she lashes out, accusing Anita of cruelty for revealing the truth. At others, she slips into a wounded silence, pretending not to care while her eyes betray the storm inside her. The tension builds in quiet increments. Dinner conversations that once felt routine are now laced with veiled barbs. Small gatherings turn into battlefields where every remark carries hidden meaning. The Dupree estate, once a place of prestige, begins to feel like a stage where rival performances play out in whispered tones and half-smiles. Leslie plays the role of the untouchable heiress, Anita the role of patient benefactor, Eva the reluctant moral compass. But beneath these performances lies the undeniable truth that everything is unraveling. And so the stage is set. The question lingers with every interaction, every calculated silence, every flare of Leslie's temper. Will Leslie finally see the truth of herself and embrace change, or will she continue her descent into arrogance until Anita has no choice but to strip her of everything she has clung to? Under the strain of Anita's revelation, Leslie begins to show cracks in her armor. For the first time, she realizes that the walls she built of money and bravado are not as unshakable as she believed. Yet instead of embracing humility, she oscillates between bursts of fury and hollow attempts to reclaim dignity. Her arrogance, once dismissed as childish posturing, transforms into something more volatile, a kind of desperate rebellion against the truth that she is not in control. The house grows heavier with tension. Every interaction with Anita feels like an unspoken duel, every shared silence a warning that patience is thinning. Anita, for her part, observes with a sharp, calculating gaze. She has long prided herself on restraint, but restraint is becoming costly. Each day that Leslie continues to spiral, Anita feels her authority being tested, her generosity twisted into weakness. Vernon, though outwardly calm, senses the mounting danger and attempts to play mediator. He advises Anita to hold her ground without striking prematurely, but his presence alone cannot diffuse the storm brewing between the two women. Eva becomes the unexpected voice of reason in these days of discord. Her distaste for Leslie's ostentation hardens into quiet resolve. She refuses to indulge Leslie's need for attention, withdrawing from her spectacles and offering instead gentle counsel that often falls on deaf ears. Yet her consistency, her insistence that life need not be a parade of wealth, plants a seed of doubt in Leslie. Humility over pride. But the choice is not simple, for to Leslie, surrendering her arrogance feels like erasing herself. Peaches, caught in the shadows of her earlier lie, grows more uneasy as the family drama intensifies. She avoids confrontation, but her silence does not erase her guilt. Anita's knowledge of her deception lingers like a ghost in every room she enters. The duplicity threatens to resurface at any moment, and Leslie, ever desperate for a scapegoat, may one day turn on Peaches if her own survival demands it. Peaches walks carefully, but in a house where secrets breed suspicion, careful steps are never safe enough. The turning point comes when Leslie, desperate to reclaim control, begins to flaunt her wealth more aggressively in public settings, not just within the confines of the family. She attends events draped in luxury, makes cutting remarks about the Dupree's reputation, and even hints at secrets that could damage them further. Her recklessness spreads beyond the estate, threatening the family's standing in the wider community. Anita sees this not just as insolence but as sabotage. The pity she once felt wanes, replaced by a tightening resolve. She had given Leslie chance after chance, but Leslie's insistence on playing with fire forces her hand closer to decisive action. Vernon warns Leslie gently but firmly that her behavior is unsustainable. His words are not cruel, but they are final. She cannot continue undermining the family without consequence. Leslie laughs it off, masking her fear with defiance, but inside she feels the walls closing in. The trust fund, once a silent assurance, now feels like a noose tightening with every choice she makes. The household fractures further when Barbara's sorrow deepens into bitterness. Though not physically present in every confrontation, her shadow hangs over the family. Leslie interprets Barbara's suffering as a justification for her own behavior, claiming she must live louder, richer, more defiantly, as though to avenge Barbara's disgrace. Anita, however, sees Barbara as a cautionary tale. The very sight of Barbara's downfall hardens her conviction that Leslie, if left unchecked, will follow the same path or worse, drag them all down with her. Eva makes one last attempt to steer Leslie toward calm. She invites her into a moment of quiet on afternoon without extravagance, without spectacle. She shows Leslie that life can carry meaning in its simplest gestures: shared tea, laughter without malice, the peace of being seen without pretense. For a flicker of time, Leslie almost surrenders to this softer rhythm. But the peace is fleeting. The moment she is reminded of her precarious hold on the trust fund, her pride surges back, louder than before. She tells herself she cannot survive as anyone other than the woman who commands attention. Anita, weary of the endless cycle, begins to consider revoking everything. Her conversations with Vernon shift in tone. They are no longer about patience but about timing. She asks herself whether mercy has become indulgence, whether sparing Leslie has only deepened her arrogance. The trust fund, once a shield, may become the very instrument Anita uses to teach her the lesson she has resisted all along. Peaches, sensing the approaching storm, contemplates revealing her own lie before it can be weaponized against her. But the risk of exposure terrifies her. If Leslie discovers that Anita has been protecting Peach's secret, she may twist the revelation into betrayal, further poisoning the fragile family dynamic. The air grows heavier, conversations sharper, as if everyone is speaking not just to each other but to the reckoning they know is coming. And then comes the decisive rupture. At a public gathering, Leslie makes a grand show of her supposed superiority, mocking the Duprees in veiled terms while flaunting jewels and gowns that symbolize her defiance. The display, meant to solidify her dominance, instead exposes her desperation. The audience is not impressed, whispers ripple through the crowd, and for the first time, Leslie sees that her arrogance isolates her rather than exalts her. Anita watches from the sidelines, her decision crystallizing in silence. When they return home, Anita confronts Leslie directly. Her words are measured but unyielding. She reminds Leslie that everything she has is very luxury. Every dollar flows not from entitlement but from Anita's pity. And pity has its limits. For the first time, Anita does not shield Leslie with silence or restraint. She warns her that the inheritance can vanish as easily as it was given. That arrogance is not a shield but a blade she is turning against herself. Leslie, cornered, lashes out with fury, accusing Anita of cruelty, betrayal, even jealousy. But beneath the rage lies a growing fear. She sees in Anita's eyes a finality she has never seen before. This is not a warning, it is a promise. Eva, watching from the margins, feels both sorrow and inevitability. She knows Leslie's choices have brought her to this precipice, and though she still wishes for redemption, she understands that Anita's hand may be the only force strong enough to bring Leslie back from the edge or to cast her over it. Vernon, ever the mediator, urges restraint but does not dispute Anita's right to act. Even he has grown weary of Leslie's unchecked chaos. Peaches, silent and trembling, realizes her own fate may be tied to the outcome. If Anita moves against Leslie, secrets may unravel, and no one will be safe from the fallout. The final question looms larger than ever, pressing down on every heart in the Dupree household. Will Anita truly strip Leslie of everything, forcing her to confront a life without the wealth and arrogance she clings to? Or will Leslie, at the very brink of ruin, finally recognize the truth and change before it is too late? The air holds the answer, thick with dread and anticipation, as the Duprees prepare for the reckoning that will redefine not just Leslie's place in the family, but the balance of power itself. Under the weight of mounting tensions, the Dupree household feels less like a family home and more like a battlefield where silence is sharper than words. Leslie, already unsteady, finds herself cornered by forces she cannot control. Anita's steady hand, Vernon's calm mediation, Eva's quiet disapproval, and Peach's guilty evasions all converge into a reality Leslie cannot deny. She is the only one who refuses to see the truth of herself. The moment Anita threatens to revoke everything is not just a clash of wills, it is the unraveling of an identity Leslie has clung to all her life. 4 days after the confrontation, Leslie withdraws into herself. She spends hours in her room, curtains drawn, jewels spread out on her bed like soldiers preparing for a war already lost. She whispers to herself that she is untouchable, that Anita would never dare to follow through. Yet beneath the bravado is the gnawing dread that this time, Anita truly means it. Her world feels like glass, still glittering, but ready to shatter at the smallest touch. Eva approaches her with kindness, perhaps for the last time. She tells Leslie that wealth is not a measure of love, that arrogance only breeds a loneliness. Leslie listens but does not respond. The silence between them is heavier than any argument. Eva walks away knowing she has said all she can, and that change must come from within or not at all. Meanwhile, Vernon and Anita speak late into the night, their conversations hushed but resolute. Vernon advises caution, but Anita's decision has crystallized. She cannot continue feeding a cycle that destroys rather than builds. For her, Revoking the inheritance is no longer an act of cruelty, it is an act of necessity. If Leslie will not learn gratitude through generosity, then perhaps she will learn survival through loss. The day Anita acts is unremarkable in every outward sense. The house is quiet, the staff goes about their routines. And yet the air is charged with an invisible electricity. Anita calls Leslie into her study, her voice calm but firm. Peaches lingers outside the door, listening, heart pounding, as if her own fate depends on what unfolds inside. Leslie enters with her usual bravado, but it cracks when she sees the documents laid neatly on Anita's desk. She tries to joke, to deflect, but Anita does not smile. With precise words, Anita tells her the inheritance is revoked. The trust fund is closed. The money that has defined Leslie's every gesture will no longer be hers. For a moment, Leslie cannot breathe. She feels the ground drop beneath her, the walls close in. She screams, she accuses, she begs, shifting wildly between rage and desperation. But Anita does not falter. Her pity has reached its end. She tells Leslie this is not punishment but consequence, the natural result of choices made in arrogance and blindness. Eva enters the room quietly, not to interfere but to bear witness. She watches as Leslie collapses into tears, her fury dissolving into raw fear. For the first time, Eva sees not the arrogant heiress but the fragile woman beneath, a woman who has built her entire life on the illusion of control and now faces the abyss without it. Peaches, unable to remain silent, finally steps forward. She confesses her earlier lie, trembling as the words tumble out. The truth lands like another blow, one that further strips Leslie of her illusions. Anita listens without anger, only with the weariness of someone who has long known but waited for honesty to emerge. She thanks Peaches for finally speaking, but the damage is done. The household is silent in the days that follow. Leslie does not leave her room. She eats little, speaks less. The jewels, once her armor, lie untouched in a box at the foot of her bed. She feels exposed, stripped of identity. Yet in this silence, something unfamiliar stirs, a small, fragile awareness that perhaps she can exist without the wealth she clung to so tightly. Perhaps there is a life beyond arrogance, though she cannot yet see its shape. Anita remains firm but not cruel. She does not gloat, nor does she soften her stance. She offers Leslie no shortcuts, only the space to face herself. Eva visits quietly, sometimes with tea, sometimes with nothing but her presence. Vernon checks in gently, reminding Leslie that family is still hers if she chooses to embrace it. Even Peaches, once terrified of Leslie's wrath, extends a hand, awkward but genuine, as if to say that even broken bonds can be rebuilt. The ending does not come with a grand redemption or a dramatic collapse. Instead, it arrives with the slow, painful acknowledgement that life will never be the same. Leslie is left with a choice: to rebuild herself on new foundations or to wither in bitterness. Anita has made her decision, but Leslie's remains unwritten. One evening, as the sun sets in streaks of orange and crimson, Leslie steps outside for the first time in days. She stands barefoot on the grass, staring at the horizon. Eva joins her, saying nothing. For the first time, Leslie does not speak of jewels or wealth. She simply whispers, "What now?" It is not an apology, not yet, but it is the beginning of one. And so the Dupree household breathes differently. The reckoning has come, the inheritance revoked, the illusions shattered. What remains is uncertain, fragile, unfinished, but real. The gates that once held Leslie captive in her arrogance have opened, not into glory, but into the unknown. Whether she walks through them in humility or defiance will be her final test.